All right. So I'm just looking at
We're missing
all the, let's see, we have Mark, Daniel, we're missing Deb Brown,
and Ryan.
and
I'm sorry, Adnan.
Adnan. Okay, so we're just missing Deb and Adnan. Okay. So, well, welcome everybody. There's Deb Brown. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. And this is our first meeting of 2024. I wanted to officially welcome, I'm going to switch the order a little bit, introduction of board members first, just to welcome everybody that is here. So we've got, I'm just doing an alphabetical order. Mark Barrett and Daniel Brewer, Deb Brown, where did she go? There she is, Deb Brown, Alan Cavalli, Susan Cooper, Nikki Halen, and Debbie Hall. Adnan is not here yet, Adnan Miranovic, Margie Palmrose, Joel Phillips, Valerie Pratt, and Julia Reisinger, and myself, Tracy Reisinger. So I want to welcome everybody officially to the board. You are all voting members as of this meeting, as of January 1st. So you can vote on any.
Great, thank you.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Yay! Congratulations on the election and welcome to the board. Yes. I'd also like to welcome everybody else who has joined us. I'm not sure how many more there will be. But welcome to everybody who is joining us for the annual meeting of the membership. If we have other guests here, I wanted to see who we have here. Carrie, I see your, what's your last name, Carrie?
My name is Carrie Fleischer, and actually, let me turn my video on. There you go. Okay, you can see me. Hi, everyone. Hi. And actually, I just have to do a little shout out. Daniel Brewer, I believe, knows my husband, Drew Fleischer. So there is a connection there. So
Awesome.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Drew says to say hi. I told him
haven't seen you since your wedding.
There you go. So nice to see you. I actually just joined the organization this year. I've participated in the Garlic Run for a number of years, but am looking to get more involved in the organization. So
awesome.
Yeah, so there you go.
We can always use more volunteers, so thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
And I want to acknowledge Adnan has joined us, so he is also here. Adnan, I just went through and introduced everybody on the board and welcomed them. So welcome to your first.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Happy New Year, everyone.
And let's see who
John
else.
Hinshaw.
John Hinshaw. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Hi there.
Trying to turn on my video. I can't tell if it's actually running or
Yes,
not.
John, we can see you.
Okay. Good evening.
And,
Good to see you guys.
Bonnie Benton is here. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hi.
Hey there.
Good job this weekend.
Good job this weekend. Both you and
Well,
Mark.
thanks.
On Ralph's Run.
And Hal Brockman is here.
Hal Brockman, yay.
And
Carissa Yang. Where's Carissa? There she is, yay.
And Joe.
And
which we've all been talking
Joe
about.
Devman, which we've been talking, has been motivating many people to try and beat him when he runs the longer distances, when we run the shorter ones. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And I'm going to get started right off the bat with the first item, which is approval of the minutes from December 12th. Julia sent them out shortly after the meeting.
Yes.
And so did everybody get a chance to read them, I'm assuming? So I would welcome a motion to accept the minutes from the December meeting.
I
So moved.
Yeah, I moved to accept it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll second.
Alan first and Valerie second.
Valerie second,
yeah. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the December minutes, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. So the minutes have been accepted. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, so next order of business is to elect our officers for this coming year. And so again, you can all the ones I've mentioned that introduced in the board, you're all voting members. So you can vote that. What we had talked about at the December meeting, people who had volunteered, I had volunteered to be president for 2 years, and Mark is volunteered to be VP of races. He would like to not be VP of races, but he's going to take it for now if we approve him, and hopefully train
if I
Yes.
may amend that, if I would like to mentor somebody, so the way I look at it is if we could find someone who wants to be co-VP or whatever title you want to give it, so that we can, I can mentor that person, in the year to come, and then, a year from now, step down from that.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. And I had asked Joel Phillips if he was interested in that, and we were going to have a conversation about that after Ralph's round, after this meeting. So I think what we want to do, go ahead, Joel.
Oh yeah, whenever you guys want, I'd be happy to talk more about that.
Yeah. So what I think would be a good idea would be to go ahead and do the election now for Mark. And then if we have a conversation and Joel is willing, we can always elect Joel at another meeting to become or shadow him for this year and then become the VP of race operations in 2025. So that would be kind of the goal if he is interested in doing that. Otherwise, we'll find somebody else who might be interested. Also, Debbie Hall has volunteered to take on the role of treasurer, much to Valerie's delight. And then Deb Brown has volunteered to take on the role of secretary. So those are the positions. I don't know if we want, yes, Hal?
I would love for you guys to just accept your position.
Well, what we need is, and I don't know if we want to do each position individually or we just want to do it as a group like we did before in August and just say, do it as a group. So the slate would be me as president, Deb Brown as secretary, Debbie Hall as treasurer, and Mark as VP of race operations. I would welcome a motion to nominate these 4 people.
May I ask one question?
Yes.
Do the treasurer and president run concurrent terms?
At this point, yes. Mhm.
Good, okay. Then I so move that we accept that plate.
Second.
Okay. Deb got the
Yeah, I
second.
agree.
Okay. All in favor of this slate of candidates for the officers for ORRC, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so these are our new officers of the club.
Congratulations. I'll take the minutes for this meeting and then Deb, you can take over
You can
next time.
take over next time. Yes, so Julie will do the meetings out, and we will start the transition process. The minutes have to be approved before we can actually change the slate with the bank. So we may actually do a vote via email of the minutes just so we can get that officially into the record so we can take that to the bank and get the signature people all changed. Okay. Awesome.
Tracy,
Yes.
question. Do all of the new board members have emails or have ORC emails?
I know, Daniel, we're setting them all up. Yes. Okay.
Because some are based on the position that they hold, and some are just based on their name, at large.
I have not moved Debbie Hall to treasurer or Deb Brown to secretary yet. So those are things I should do.
I need a little time in that treasure thing before you move me out.
All right.
I guess, but at this point, does everybody have some kind of ORC email? Because here's the thing, like if I want to send a message to all board members, can I do that now or should I wait a week or 2 or whatever, knowing that if I send something to the board, it will go to all the board members?
It should.
Yeah, we set them up before, after the election, so they should all be able to get emails that are going to the board.
I will double check, but I'm sure they are.
Okay. Okay, so everybody be sure to be checking your emails so we can make sure that everybody's getting the information. The same thing if you are a race director, please be checking your race director email because we have like, I'll just use the example of Shampooey or Hegmud. We send something to race directors, not to the board members or the individuals at this point, unless we are concerned that they don't have access yet or something. So, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
and so will there, will you be sending an updated directory then? Or has that been created? Because we did a directory, like 3 months ago.
Right. We'll do it. Yeah, we will update that.
Cool.
Yep. Hal? You're on mute, Hal. There you go.
Nothing.
Oh, no, nothing. Okay. Take your hand down.
How do I
Okay.
do that?
I think you just click on it. I think you just click on it again.
I can do it for him.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank
Okay,
you. All right.
thank you.
All right. Well, congratulations, everybody. All right. So I was going to present the budget for 2024. Let's see here. How do I do that? This might be tricky. Carissa, do I have access to share my screen or is it only you as the host?
I think you should. I can change it if needed.
Oh, no, I think you can share. No, I think I can. So I'm going to, hold on. Just a second. Sheets. And search. I should have had this ready. I apologize. Okay, 2024 budget approved. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. There. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. So this was the budget that the board approved. And I just wanted to, it was reformatted based on everybody's request to have income expenses side by side instead of top and bottom. And so this was the approved budget. So we have the different categories and the bottom line, we have income and expenses for everything we could think of. And some of the things don't have an income like member picnic or the awards banquet. There's a lot of expenses. And that's why we need more revenue from the races and from the dues to give us a balanced budget. So here we go down at the bottom. So the balanced budget is $264,600. I will say on the Friday before Ralph's run, we actually rented 4 units because it was approved that we would be moving our equipment from our current storage facility to a new facility. And so the storage right now we've got budgeted at $32,000. And our estimate is that with the 4 units we're renting at the U-Haul, it's going to cost us about $13,000 a year instead of the $32,300. So we're going to save quite a bit on that, which gives us a little bit more leeway in some of the other areas, such as maybe the community outreach programs or something like that. So just wanted to show you that. The other thing that Valerie and Deb will be working on, which I'm assuming we're going to be fine. There's a possibility of a bill from the IRS for $10,000. They say that we did not file the 2018 tax form, but Dave Cook had a copy of it. So we think we did file it. If they didn't have it, or if Dave didn't have it, we will also argue that that was the year that Dave Green passed away. And so we were in a transition year if it never actually got there. But Dave provided us with a copy of what he had done because he was interim treasurer that year. So that's one expense we may have. We're not sure. It'll take a while from the IRS to hear from the IRS if we're going to have to pay that or not. Any questions? Are there any questions about the budget? It's not something we need to vote on because it's just, I just wanted to present it to everybody and show what all of our different expenses were.
Tracy, can you hold on and let us see? There seem to be 3 sections here. So
Sure.
can you put each section up one at a time for maybe 20 or 30 seconds or 10 seconds so that everyone can look at each section and see if we have any questions in that?
Sure. The first section here is primarily, there's interest and member dues income. That's our primary non-race revenue. And then we have the race income. So this is all of our different races. This is what we estimated the total revenue would be for races, but it's really kind of a crapshoot. It's basically estimating what our participation rate will be. And it'll also depend on what events people sign up for, because many of our events have multiple distances and different costs. So it really is kind of hard to say.
And so for Turkey Trot, are those figures, because that's our big moneymaker, are those figures relatively close to the 2023 final numbers?
This was approved prior to Turkey Trot being finalized. We actually made over 114,000 in income from Turkey Trot. And so I'm thinking we made a heck of a lot more than the 36,000 revenue that we've estimated. So now next year for Turkey Trot, we are going to cap it at 2,500, and we had about 3,000 this year. So that will cut it down a little bit, but I think we're safe with this income for Turkey Trot for 2024 at least.
Okay, so would it make sense to change the numbers in Turkey Trot based on the 2 statements that you just made? A, that we made more, but B, that we're capping it. Could you get a closer estimate?
Well, I think if we cap it, it might come closer to the 84,000. It might still be not. So I would say don't worry about it, because all of these are going to change over the course of the year. And so we don't want to have to worry about changing them every time we get updated numbers.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So then the next section is other events, which are primarily non-income, non-revenue creating. We have the 1200 Club, the awards banquet, community outreach, equipment rental. We get a little bit of income from that, but not a whole lot. The magnets, the member giveaway, we just did the bib boards. They went into that, might show up this year. We have the President's Challenge and the RD workshop. So those are other things that we do for the members and for the community that don't bring in a lot of revenue, but we do have sizable expenses for them.
And what's the best guess on what the 16,400 is in other events?
That's the total of all of these.
Oh, I'm so brain cramp.
That's
Apology.
Okay. Okay. And then the last section is the general club expenses. This is basic administration of the club. And the biggest ones are going to be, of course, the rental storage, which we're going to hopefully save close to 20,000 on that one. That'll be great. Insurance and dues is primarily RRCA. We pay for that. The social runs is the Thursday night group. Professional fees is what we pay for our graphic artists to send out our e-newsletter twice a month. And then travel and lodging would be for the people who are going to the RRCA convention. This is where we've made a decision to send more than the number we normally do. We're going to send 7 people this year, which is Mark, Barrett, and all of the new board members. So that will be a much larger number than what we've currently budgeted. But we will have savings from the rental storage. So I'm not concerned about that at all, because it's probably going to be no more than $10,000. If we save close to 20 in rental, we'll still come that in. So we're
And before you finalize it, can you make changes in those two figures?
It's already been finalized.
It is
This
the
was
final.
voted on and approved in December.
Ah, okay, okay.
So
Can I-
again, numbers will be different, but yeah.
Can I ask one question? Postage and mailing, you just sent these bid boards out, that had to cost all by itself more than $200.
Yes, and what we had hoped was that the bid boards would get sent prior to January 1st. And that wasn't able to happen, so that's why it wasn't included in here. So
Okay.
that will be a higher cost for 2020. Yes.
Market be higher, so.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Good, and thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. Back to there. All right. So that's the budget for 2024, and again, we can always Deb will update us on the status of income and expenses as we go through the year at the different meetings. So, okay, here's where I wanted to kind of present a state of the club address, and I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I get it out there right, and I want to make sure the wording is correct. So forgive me if this sounds rote, but it's meant to come from the heart. And so here's where I consider the state of the club to be as of right now. It's been my privilege and honor to lead this club during its period of transition. It's been a turbulent year with many changes, but I truly believe the club is now stronger than ever and in very good shape financially. I wanted to touch on a few points in particular. When the year first started, there were only 5 members on the board of directors. And after the transition in July, there were 7 members. And as we head into 2024 with 13 members on the board, I want to again officially welcome everybody elected to the board of directors at their first official meeting. Also, at the start of the year, we had 7 race directors, 3 for Hag Mud and 4 for all of the other events we put on. And going into 2024, we now have 12 race directors spread out over all of our events. We also have 5 volunteers coordinating different aspects of the club, such as our website, social media, 1200 Club, volunteer coordinators, equipment manager, and membership and technology. Now we have 11 volunteers working together in all of those areas. And so all of this means that the work of the club is spread out between more people, so we're not reliant on a few individuals to do everything, which is not the way to recruit and develop new volunteers and leaders for the club. It will also prevent burnout for those stepping up to do these jobs. So I really appreciate all of you who have stepped up to the different positions and coordinating responsibilities to help us so that it's not just a couple of people trying to get the work of the club done. In 2023, we had 208 individual volunteers at all of our events, not including the race directors, board members, and the high school groups that also helped out. There's over 300 when we take that into account. It takes so many of us to put on the events that we do, and it has been so heartwarming in the past 5 months to have so many members come up to me and say they are happy where the club is going and are coming back to volunteering. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We couldn't do it without all of you members. The race directors and the board of directors and coordinators are the faces of the club, but we do it for all of you, and collectively together we make the club run. From the person handing out the water to the person monitoring our bank accounts, it's a collective effort, and you're all doing such a wonderful job. It's exciting to see what we'll be able to do in the future. As of December 31st, we had 518 memberships with 711 members. It's gone up a little bit since then. This is down slightly from last year at the same time, but these numbers are still strong, and I'm optimistic about the members and memberships that we do have going forward. When I say they're down a little bit, we have 518 memberships compared to about 550 last year. We have 711 members compared to about 770 last year. So it's not large, a huge number lower, but it is slightly lower. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. As we just showed in the approved budget in 2024, the club's finances are strong. I didn't show it in the budget, but we do have over a year's worth of operating expenses in reserves. So if anything should happen, like canceling Turkey Trot due to ice and snow, we'd be able to continue functioning. But that doesn't mean we aren't looking at ways to be fiscally responsible. We've made the decision last month to begin the process of moving our equipment to a different location to save expenses, as well as make it easier for our race directors by having the equipment stored at a location where they can also rent vehicles for their events. Everything's right together. And I also just found out they also have propane. So if we want to just have our rent propane tanks and have them filled there, that's awesome. By cutting our storage costs more than in half, we can put these saved expenses back into the club in other ways, such as member giveaways or donations to community partners that encourage running in the schools like Liberty Fit. In closing, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for supporting ORRC. I welcome your feedback, questions, and comments on how we're doing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We all need your input to help us run the club the way you want us to run it. And don't be surprised if I reach out to you to volunteer in some way. We're always looking to recruit new volunteers to develop into new leaders for the club's future. Some of us would like to step down in a year or two and need you all to take our places. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you out there on the roads. That is the status.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you. All right. The regular business. So that is, I guess I would say, the end of the membership part, annual membership meeting. We do still have some business to take care of. So everybody who is here is still welcome to hang around and see how we work, so that you can see some of the things we're talking about. One of the things that I should actually state I didn't do this part of the thing. For those of you who aren't on the board, or even if you are on the board, this is your opportunity to ask any questions of us. Were there any questions from anybody about the status of the club or the budget or anything like that?
Hi, this is Carrie. I guess you had mentioned that there had been some challenges. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what's been going on? It sounds like things are shaping up, but that would be interesting for me, not knowing much about the background of the club.
Yes, absolutely. And so I will just go very, very briefly, without all of the drama that went into it. There was a transition in July of the board, and the previous board had 5 members on it. And over a course of several months, there were some discussions among ORRC members and the board. The board did have a listening session that people were invited to express their concerns. There was also discussion, lively discussion, I would say, at the annual picnic in July. I was not there, but that came to a head. And so at the July meeting, the previous board members, all 5 of them, resigned en masse. And that was right after they had elected Mark Barrett to be on the board. So Mark was the sole remaining board member of the board, and we were required to have 6. So that was July 26th. And on July 27th, Mark called an emergency meeting of people who he had been communicating with. And that's when he appointed the other 6 of us to the board. And then those 6 members voted for the new officers. So that's what happened. And I'll say that without going into a lot of details, I think the bottom line was it was a difference in vision of what the club should be and where the different people wanted the club to be going. There's just a disagreement on that. That's probably the simplest way to put it. And so we've been looking forward. I think a lot of people luckily have supported us in this transition, and it's been wonderful. The number of people who come up and said thank you so much and taking it on, and it's been very heartwarming, as I said in the status of the club. The number of people I've been able to reach out to and say, hey, would you consider doing this? And they're like, oh yeah, I'll come back, I'll start doing this. Or the new people who haven't been involved before who are like, yeah, this sounds good, I'll do it. And I really appreciate some of the conversations I've had about what's happened and other people's philosophies. And I think we're just in a really good position. I'm sorry it had to happen the way it did. It was not a good transition, but I think we are stronger as a result of
Yeah.
what else.
Yeah, good. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Joe. Bye, Joe. Okay. Any other questions? Anybody? All right. Then I will go into, let's see, is Mark and Bonnie, sorry, yeah. You guys want to go into a quick recap of Ralph's run?
I'll start. Give Bonnie a turn in a moment. Overall, it went well. The weather as a race director, there's two things that I can't control: the weather and whether all the volunteers show up. We had enough volunteers to make it all work. The weather, if you were there, we went out to start the race at 9 o'clock and it was sunny, and then 5 minutes later it started pouring rain. And I feel so. I was glad to be warm and inside. I feel sorry for those people who had to be out there. But the sunshine came and then left again, and came and left again. And but despite the weather, my impression is that people had a good time. People appreciated having the 5K being added as a distance. The kids run once around the track was just it was my favorite race event of the day was the kids run. But I think the whole overall everything was just well received and went pretty smoothly. Concerned the numbers are down a little bit this year, and I don't know if it's because of the weather or what. I think I'm looking forward to our SWAT coming up in February, because running, partly because of the pandemic, running events in general have suffered, and I think ORRC needs a particular effort to do better in the future to attract more people. And I think doing the SWAT will help us focus on what things that we can do to attract more people. But I think those who did show up had a good time. It was an event I think that Ralph would have been proud of.
Yep.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I have to say that everything leading up to the race, the day of race and everything was very well organized this year. We had lots of volunteers. I didn't hear any complaints about anything. I was a little disappointed that there weren't as many people as before. I looked at the numbers, and last year we had about 250 participants. This year we had 235 who registered, but then only about 200 showed up to do the race. So the weather may have been a factor with that.
Yeah.
But the volunteers were great. The kitchen crew was great again. It just seemed to go really smoothly this year.
Yeah, I heard all positive things. Everybody was just happy to be out there and seeing everybody again, and it was great to see Ralph's Brown Family Carol and her family. Awesome, thank you. Okay, I had sent a request for community outreach funds, and this was from Twelson Hills Parks and Rec. They to give you I don't know, has everybody had a chance to look through the request for funding?
Yes, I had a chance. I did.
Yes.
This is a group they do track as well. They put on cross-country meets in the fall, and it's for middle schoolers. And this is a really wonderful opportunity. Jeff Weirman and Julie and I have volunteered. I know Judy, I've seen Judy West out there volunteering as course marshals and stuff. And it's just a great opportunity for kids who haven't had any experience with running to get started. And so they, for cross country, are asking for just under $1,000 for different types of equipment, for ribbons, measuring wheel, tag for meet days. It's all listed in the application. And so they've explained, I think they requested a total of $950.38. Yes, Daniel?
Well, when I was before the pandemic, when I was teaching at Whitford, I was a part of this program, helping with the cross country team at Whitford. And this is an awesome program. They're not asking for a ton. If we can afford this, this is also a chance for us really to get back to our roots of what we're supposed to be doing anyway. You never know, we might even be able to get some people into some of our events. We let them know that, hey, you know, summer solstice isn't going to be in that area but anymore, but whatever races we have, let them know that we're out there, and also more just support the sport. When we did this transition last summer, I was pretty adamant that we kept our mission to go back to supporting running. And so I will wholeheartedly supporting this group and offering the entire grant. But I will wait to make that motion until we have further comments.
Valerie?
You know, I fully support this, but I have a request for consideration that going forward, like we used to do, we did it once a year, but I think twice a year is fine, but that's just included in the budget, and maybe look, you know, or maybe we added in at this time of year when we kind of know what we did for the prior year, but that we set an amount and then we have a process. And the other thing I really like that in the past when we did this, we'd ask them to just report back to us and how they use the money with a couple pictures and stuff, because
absolutely,
you know, it's good for promotion for the club, and it also is kind of heartwarming to see how well these funds are used.
Yes.
Yeah, Valerie, do you know, is there a written policy somewhere, or is it just always been informal?
No, but I saw that I guess the prior board, they were just handing money out whenever someone came and asked. So and I've been on, oh, sorry, I used to be on PTOs and stuff at the schools, and it's just better to have a semi-formal process. I mean, there could be exceptions, but just so, and it makes it easier for the treasurer, because you know, you just don't want, oh, let's give this and that, and then and sometimes there's a lot of good causes, and we want to give it to the ones that the board decides would be most effective and matches what we're trying to represent.
Deb Brown?
Pardon me if this is like too detailed of a question, because I'm used to being on a board that deals with public dollars, and so it's different kind of from the financial point of view. Do we know where that program gets their funding from?
Well, it's Twelton Valley Hills and Parks and Rec. So I think they get them primarily from participation fees. They don't get a lot of money from anybody, really.
Yeah.
But I don't think they get, yeah.
I know that, let's see here.
The kids pay a fee if they can, and if they can't, then there's grant money available to them, but it comes really out of the Twelton Valley Parks and Rec budget. They allocate a chunk of it, and the program is put on. Thankfully, we have enough volunteers. There's usually some stipulations there. I do like the idea of having an application process. When we were doing grants for Yahoo Employees Program, they had a process like that, and they were, and I also agree with Valerie that show a report afterwards, just kind of saying, hey, this is what happened. That's all good. I also like the idea of doing this just twice a year. So when we're approached, we can say, you know, here's our next cycle is in July. Let's go ahead and we can dedicate half a meeting to it if we want to at that point, or even have a committee that's dealing with community outreach that deals with it ourselves. But I do like that idea, but on the other side, I really like this group, but I want to give them the money.
Okay, Alan and then Adnan. Alan, you're on mute.
Everyone would love to do that to me. Just to solidify what's been said, I would think it makes sense, A, to give them the money now, but B, to come up with a formal process, whether it's once, twice, 3 times a year, whatever, what the application process is, and put it on the website. But since we don't have anything, I would definitely recommend honoring this request right now.
Adnan?
Yeah, probably just repeating things here, but yeah, I'm not opposed to this by any means. It seems like we are in a healthy place. But I would like to also just reiterate for some sort of process as maybe coming from like a treasury kind of perspective. This feels it feels difficult to weigh in on anything more than like an emotional basis, I guess. So it does feel like we are financially healthy enough to just make this happen. But I think in the future it would be good to like have that rigor and say, yes, for sure, this is enough. This is, you know, like you said, having a budget.
Leave him alone.
Yeah.
We
This
do
is
have-
Go
ahead.
This is Mark. Sorry. I just amen to what Alan said, and I would go further to say that I would be willing to be part of a committee or subcommittee to put together a proposal for what the process would be, so that, you know, we approve the one tonight, and then I and a couple others, we can meet and work on a draft of a procedure that we would use in the future.
We do have $3,000 budgeted. So we could say, you know, of the 3,000, 1,000 can go to this one, and then we have 2,000 left to spend the rest of the year. Or more.
I know.
We have more, yeah.
Liberty Fit is going to be submitting something soon, I know.
Okay.
And we have supported them in the past, so.
Yeah, I want to give just a quick history to the newer people who may not be as familiar. We have had some people who have requested funds every year, such as Liberty Fit, which is a high school group at a Liberty High School where it's not the cross country or track team, it's underrepresented and economically disadvantaged students, introducing them to running and helping them train for the Helvetia Half Marathon. So they have typically asked for funds every year. I know last year they asked for, Valerie, I don't remember what it was. It was like they requested like 1,000 or 2,000, and the board said, well, we have all this money, let's just give them 5,000. And so it was, I hesitate to give more than what people are asking for. But we have also, we have donated to middle school programs. We've also donated, there was a homeless running program that George Watson was a part of, where people ran with the homeless people to help them kind of introduce them to that and help relieve stress and things like that. There was also one, was there funding for a prison one?
Yeah, I think.
So it's not just youth programs, there are other programs as well. But so that's kind of the history of it. We have not given out a lot of funding in the past couple of years because we haven't had a lot of requests. It's been primarily Liberty Fit and some others, but we used to be more active in it. So it'd be nice to go back to some more groups. Yeah.
You know, one thing I would recommend for a longer run, after we do the first two things, give the money and develop a processing committee, but for the long run, I would recommend that we see if we can find a foundation, maybe with Nike, that would help us fund these things on a larger scale. So we would not ask that foundation for money for us, but we would be the one to channel all those requests in and send them to a larger foundation, so that if we received $10,000, for example, in requests per year, we could help all of them get funded if we so choose.
Okay, so there's two things we kind of want to decide. One is, do we want to approve this application? And the other is maybe setting up a subcommittee to set up an application process and timeline for the rest of this year. So we can go out and kind of advertise, hey, we have some funds. If you want to apply for these funds, this is the process, and this is when we'd be making a decision. Is that right?
Daniel, I think you're the one to make the motion because you're to approve the funds because you're closest.
I would like to approve that the funds for Tualatin Valley be approved as requested. I would also like to stipulate to them that we would love to have a report when it's concluded. And finally, I will table my second motion until this one's been acted upon.
You can't table anything that hasn't been proposed, Daniel.
Well, we had discussion on another issue, and I want to see this one dealt with first. So
Well, of course, yeah.
You have a second?
let's so move.
I would second that.
Second the motion. Yeah,
Yeah.
Don't know if seconded.
second the motion.
I would,
I'd not
it's Joel, sorry guys,
Okay,
I don't have the thumbs up button, but I would be
Okay.
happy to be on that committee as well.
okay. Let's go ahead and vote. Everybody approve, in favor of the motion to approve the funds, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. We will notify them that we will be sending them the funds and with the stipulations that they get a report back with some pictures and stuff. On the second issue. And the second issue to have
Yes.
committee. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
I'd like to make a motion that a committee be established with the appointments to be made by Tracy and Mark to set up a committee to deal with requests, grant requests such as these, and put a system in place so that we can have this as a part of our procedures, not necessarily part of our bylaws, but a part of our procedures, which probably will be something we're going to talk about next month. But I would like to move that a committee be formed with under Tracy and Mark's direction.
Second the motion.
Margie seconds. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. Okay, and if anybody's interested in volunteering, just send me a quick email so I know who all is interested in serving on this subcommittee. Okay. And for those of you who aren't actually board members, you don't have to be a board member to, you can participate in this subcommittee if you want to volunteer with that. Okay. Awesome.
That would be awesome too, if we get some people who aren't board members to be involved. This is a good way to get started.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Okay, the next one is President's Challenge updates. So we have our 5K challenge, our 10K challenge, our 10 Mile Plus challenge, and our President's Challenge. And so Nikki has volunteered to take that on. Thank you so much. And we've also, I contacted Jeff Huber, and similarly to how he did in the past where he would track age group awards, he says he can track this for us. The participants in these different challenges. So, huzzah! So he is going to help with that. So it's just going to be a matter of, it's super, super important, especially for the President's Challenge, not so much for the shorter distances, but for the President's Challenge, where it's not just participating, it's also volunteering, that if you have people who volunteer for your events, you need to make sure they've either volunteered online through Run Sign Up, or that you get us their names, because if they're not on the list, we won't know to give them credit toward the President's Challenge. So please do that. So Ralph's Run was the first one in this. So that's the start of the challenge, and should be fun. And Mickey, you and I will connect, and we can kind of figure out how we're going to do all this. We have a kind of a timeline and different emails that we would want you to send out and things like that. So. ORRC refund policy. We talked about this last month, and everybody agreed. We went out to the race directors and everybody agreed. Basically, it's up to the race director, but the first choice is to offer, if they feel the person has a reasonable reason to deserve some type of refund, the first option will be to offer them a transfer to another event. Or to the next year's event if they want to postpone that, and then only offer refunds on a case-by-case basis if the race director feels it's warranted. And we're not going to dictate what it is, but I have had people emailing me saying, like for Vernonia, hey, what if I register now for Vernonia and then I get COVID? Can I get a refund? And I just said, policy is no refunds, because we're still paying for everything. If you don't show up the day before, we're still out the expense for supporting you. But on a case-by-case basis, they might offer a transfer, they might offer to delay to next year. So I told them that. I didn't say refunds would be available, but to contact the race director. So everybody agreed that's going to kind of be the policy. It'll be up to the race directors, but please, 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 as race directors, if you are race directors, use your discretion. That we don't want to just be given refunds all over the place and people get out, because if it's just a matter of if you ask, you'll get one, then that's not really fair to those who don't think to ask based on their circumstances. So just be mindful of that. Okay, the other thing that we notified everybody of as of next month's meeting, it worked out. Everybody, the time is going to be at 7 o'clock instead of 7:30. So basically half an hour earlier, so we can get done a little bit earlier, hopefully. So for the February meeting on, they're all going to be at 7, and Carissa said she would update the meeting time for Zoom once we finish this one. Okay. So thank you all for your input and your willingness to meet a little bit earlier. Daniel.
Just wanted to point the February meeting. Don't plan on it being over. I'm carving out 2 hours for that. I hopefully will not be using it for the strategic planning, but be prepared. It will not end early. There's 3 phases to this exercise. I doubt we'll get through all 3, but I would love to get through 2 of them in the evening if we could, because it puts us in a good place for the year. So strategic planning is typically done on a Saturday all day. So we'll get through it in 2 hours.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for.
And yeah, and for the secretary, that should be SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Oh, it's OT. SWOT opportunities. Sorry, that's what.
Oh, Alan, for you, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and
opportunities.
Opportunities.
All right. Let's see. That's the topics for the next board meeting. We just have the SWOT analysis. That's it. We have time to do some other things, but I don't think we will. So just plan on.
Could I have just a couple quick minutes for good of the order?
Sure.
Because I've got the thing is I've got a number of things that I've brought up in the last month, and people, that's a good idea, but we never kind of come back to it. And I'm not saying we come back to it now, but I want to mention a couple things. And one of the things, if I could, maybe a new thing handled very quickly. If you'll be so patient with me. So first off, those of you going to the RRCA convention, I need everybody. I've sent out several emails. I need some key information to get people registered and also buy plane tickets. Most of you have sent that. If you have not replied to that email, do it as soon as possible. We need to get, airfare is cheaper when you buy it sooner and all that kind of stuff. So those of you going to the RRCA convention, please reply to my email so I have all the essential information so I can proceed with that. Second, I have sent out once, and I will send it out again, a template, because we've talked about a number of new policies for our races, like and our language needs to be consistent from race to race, and so I'm going to resend that. I'll send it this week. I would like to have all board members and race directors look it over and give me any kind of feedback on that. So the wording is good, and again, so that we're consistent from race to race. Like for example, what is our policy on refunds, and that kind of thing. But I will be resending that soon. And as part of that, the template is a piece of the race director's manual, which I would like to like I say, it's part procedural. I mean, how do we do things? The board doesn't really need to vote on it. It's just how we do things. But there are certain elements of the RD manual that do involve decisions by the board, because they're budgeting kinds of things. And so that's another thing too I want to get resolved soon. And again, I can send that out for people to look at and to comment on as far as the RD manual, so that we can proceed. And again, so just we're all on the same page with all of that. The last thing, if you give me time, I'll give you just a couple of minutes. I Some races have a podium, first, second, third podiums at the finish line. And I've got a friend of mine who's a cabinet maker, a woodworker, and just fine work. And anyhow, I came up with a proposal, a design for a podium, and it's a nesting podium. So the three pieces fit into each other, so it takes up less space. And he's put together a proposed design for this, but it's a bit of money. It's almost it's $950. Or excuse me, it's almost $1,000 to build it. And this is the kind of thing where I need board approval to spend that kind of money.
Mhm.
So, any questions about the podium?
No,
Yeah,
I
one-
know that
Is it-
Ryan
Do
and
you like
Mark,
the idea? Hate the idea? I mean, let's just see even if we should even do it. That if you like it or hate the idea, I'm looking for feedback on that.
I will say, Mark, that I know Ryan and Mark from Heg Mud had requested a podium, so I know that they would use it at their event if you had it built. So it wouldn't just be for one event; it would be for all of ours.
Oh,
And
it would be for all events. Absolutely, yes.
yeah, and
Could we
So
get some
Mo-
kind of
Mo-
visual on it before we make a decision? I know
Well,
you talked about it.
Well, I mean, I've got a design, but essentially picture it as three boxes,
Right.
roughly square boxes, but they nest.
Right.
That is, you got a big one that fits into a small one fits into a bigger one, and a bigger one into that. That way, it takes up less
Are they
space. when
painted? Are they painted
they
like with
would-
the Oregon Roadrunners Club logo or something like that?
They would. There's four sides to it, right? It's a box. There's the four sides of the box, and three of the four sides would be plywood, just to be solid, because nobody sees them. But the very front, you would use a good quality wood, and it would have on the front the ORRC logo, and also a slot, where the name of the run could be fit into the front. So that you would, so in picture, how can I say, when awards are given, what you would see is this: three boxes, each one a little slightly different height, a person standing on those boxes, and you would see first, second, third. You'd also see the ORRC logo, and you would see the name of the race. And that, where you could change the name of the race. So, I can send you a picture, but that's, a verbal picture anyway.
So with the current race schedule, you'd have a listing, or you'd have a number of tags that you would slide into the spot. And if there's any additional races, you would be able to create additional slots for, or additional creation slots or whatever that we would put in.
Yes.
For a fee.
Well, no, you're talking like a thing that you would slide, a piece of wood you would slide into a bracket, and the wood,
right.
You could have one that would say Ralph's Run, and another one said Vernoni,
Right.
and so on. Yeah.
And Mark, I'm with Margie's original request. I am a very visual person. I've seen descriptions that don't look like what it eventually is. So I would like to see a mock-up of all of these parts.
Okay, I can send. We don't have to vote on tonight. If people want to see it, I can send you what I have.
Yeah,
I agree that it's a great idea, but if we could just see what it would look like.
Deb
So
Brown.
this one.
I've
Hold
had
on.
it for a while. Thank you. First, Mark, I was confused because I thought you meant the finisher arch, and I was like, I think that Hag already has one of those. But you're talking about a podium for runners to stand on for their picture for first, second, and third place.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, my first initial thought is that if you're asking the board to approve an expenditure for almost $1,000, I want to see a proposal with pictures, and I would like to for something that's $1,000. Frankly, they could just stand on three crates. I want to see some competing. I want to see some competing bids, right? So, I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Like, to have it thrown out randomly at a board meeting for us to consider. Like, I would prefer, like, hey guys, maybe we can put this on the agenda for next time, and but I need a proposal for something like that. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So you're not opposed to the idea of the podium, you just want to be sure it doesn't cost too much and we pick the best one.
Yeah, like $900 seems like a lot of money for 3 boxes. Just
Okay,
saying.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, I hear you. I hear you. I will put something more formal together for a future meeting.
Perfect. Okay.
My only thought is going to slow down my award ceremony considerably. I fly through mine, so.
And yeah, and one additional thought, and it really is related to what Daniel said. This has to be user friendly for the race director. Race directors have a lot of things going on. It's got to be simple.
Yep, I hear you.
Thank Mark. Good idea. I'm glad you brought it up.
So yeah, so
Oh.
that's my quick list. Thank you for your patience.
I know the board will approve this, but I think since it's something the race directors will use, it'd be great if somehow it gets run by the race directors for comments before it came back to the board too. Sorry to give you a lot of work there, Mark, but
Well, I'll just be sure the RDs are in the loop, you know,
yeah, just so they know too, because you might.
And all that. Yeah, I'll be sure the RDs are in the loop for all that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it sounds like a nice idea, but we want to make sure that enough of them want to use it too, right? So
that is correct. Yeah. If only 2 or 3 people want to use it, it's not worth buying. But if everybody wants to use it, it would be. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mark, I don't want to lose Deb's comment of competing proposals. I think something like that does make sense. Are there other people who might be able to give us something that works well?
Daniel?
I have another. Yeah, I think I've got another. I think it's Daybreak Racing. They have something, and I could ask them where they got theirs. So yeah, I can look for other bids too.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Yep.
I've had one item for the cause. Wasn't sure if you were going to get to the moving day, but I do have one idea here, and I've already told Tracy and Julia that if one of you guys wants to borrow my new to me honking size SUV, somebody can drive it, then more to it. But I think as we go through the old equipment, what we're going to find is a plethora of shirts and swag and dated stuff that we're saving to give away in the future. And what I would like to propose is that we set all that stuff aside, and maybe at Shampooey or at some other upcoming event, we have a garage sale. And we either get rid of it or we donate it to somebody, and let's start fresh. We got a fresh idea for the club. I know we've got some stuff out there I've seen several years, and I had for Dual, I had shirts from 2019 out there, and we still didn't get rid of them. So anyways, I'm just proposing that we kind of either donate it to a shelter or have a garage sale or do something with it and just start fresh.
And I will say that we have gotten rid of a lot of stuff, because at Garlic and at Best Damn Run and at Turkey Trot, we kind of had tables that just it's free, take it. And so we got rid of a ton of old stuff. So some of the shelves are emptier because but what part of the moving process we'll be doing inventory and figuring out what do we need, what do we not need, that type of thing. So.
Great. I mean, I just think this is a kind of a no-brainer. If they're socks and they're not dated, of course, we'll keep them and give them at the next race. But as long as we don't order the same amount of socks at the next race, and then have a bunch more. So I am, by the way, except at Summer Solstice Run, I'm going to do T-shirts because Dave always did. But at Dual, I'm done doing shirts. I mean, even if it's the greatest shirt ever, nobody's buying them. So I'm done doing T-shirts. So anyways, that's one of the things that sticks around forever.
Can I just throw in a quick comment to Tracy and Julia they've done a commendable job of trying to clean that stuff out. So I'm sure we'll find more, but
Bravo.
I had a quick question for Rouse Run for Mark and Bonnie. How did the Caboose Award go over?
Oh, it was awesome. Okay.
It was great.
Okay, so there were two people tied for last, and I caught them like, well, you know, there's a kind of a hook to the finish line. I caught up at the top of the hook, and I said, you know, there's only one Caboose, right? You both won't get it. And I just want a clean finish, and they promised me a clean finish, which meant they talked about it. So they started jogging a little bit, and the guy, it was a man and a woman, and the man jogged just a little bit faster, and he crossed the finish line second from last. And so then the woman, I forget her name.
Claire Carter.
Yes. She's a 50 stater. So 10 yards from the finish line, she fakes that she had fell from exhaustion, crawls on her hands and knees across the finish line, and then does 2 push-ups, because that's what you do after you finish a race. And so she took it entirely in the spirit that it was given. And yeah, I think the other thing that was cool about what happened is that, you know, if we a year ago, you know, the last person across the finish line would have been met by Jeff the timer and 2 or 3 volunteers just kind of, can we go home yet, kind of a thing. And this year, because we had the Caboose, I gathered a bunch of people. There were maybe 20 of us that walked out to their hey, they're coming, they're almost here. There were 20 of us, and we were cheering and making a big deal about these last 2 people across the finish line. And it worked. It was what it was supposed to be, a celebration of the last person across. And it wasn't like, you person, you're really, really slow. It was, you matter. We celebrate the first, we celebrate the middle, we celebrate the last. And it just went over so terrifically.
That's awesome. Okay.
Thanks. I assume you do not have video, do you?
You have a couple pictures.
We got some pictures. So one of the volunteers sent some pictures.
Good.
And
Good.
if we talk, yeah. So we do, yeah, because I think Tracy, you got some couple pictures. You got those sent to you?
Yeah.
No,
So
I mean
we'll
pictures of that finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't. I don't know if we got the video of her doing the push-ups and all, but I know we got.
We have her crawling across the line. Yeah, we have her crawling across the line, so we can put that up in the smug mug.
There you go.
Susan?
Yeah. So did you have the Caboose award out at the finish line, or did she then come in and then it was awarded in the building?
We gave it to her at the finish line.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yes.
Great.
So now there's going to be competition for like, oh no, after you. No, after you.
Margie?
So changing the subject from the Caboose, which is awesome. I just think that is a great story and a great finish. But for moving day on Saturday, the weather is supposed to be a little iffy.
No, it's not till the 20th. Next week.
Oh, the 20th, not this weekend, but the next weekend. Hello. Okay, so
yeah. Otherwise,
I can't figure out where I am half the time. I don't know. So what day is it? Whatever. Okay. I was all prepared to do it this weekend. Anybody want to go?
Yeah. Wait till you get to be old, Margie.
Oh my gosh. You're too funny. I think I'm older than you, Alan.
No, you're not. We've already determined that.
The day after moving day is the day that Mark, I get to call Mark my little brother for 3 months. So
I did have something that I wanted to bring up, not now, but at a future meeting. When we volunteered for Hag Mud, one of the things they asked us when we volunteered, because we usually get the $50 credit for volunteering, is did we want to donate our $50 credit to the equivalent to the Pay It Forward fund. Oh. And so I thought that was a great idea, and I would love to start doing that with when people volunteer for our events and run sign up. If we give them the option of, you get this $50 credit, but if you don't want it or you're not going to use it, would you like to? That way we can start putting that into a Pay It Forward fund to give to people who need extra help, with their registration fees or something like that. So that Mark had presented a while ago. So something
that's the best idea I've heard this meeting today. That's awesome.
That's part of that template that I'm talking about is the PIF. I call it Pay It Forward. The PIF is part of that template that I'll be sending around for people to look at.
Yeah. they just made it so easy to do, and I just thought that's a great way to do it. Susan?
I have another question for Mark, just as curiosity. How soon will it be before you get the volunteer credits emailed to them in case people ask me?
We're doing it. Yeah, we'll get that done in the next day. It's on our list to do. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, all right. I think that's everything. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Welcome to the new board members, and I'm looking forward to a really good year. All right. We are adjourned.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, all.
Good night.